Travis Alexander's best friend surprised us with this.
We laid there in bed, my wife and I wondering, like, are our children safe? You know, like, do we need to go get our kids? How did we get to this place in our life where someone like this is in our house?
Can it get any more shocking than what Chris Hughes revealed?
So Travis jumps off the bed, jerks the door open, and there's Hodi Ariastein with the most frightening, evil, I mean, I've never seen anything like it before or since.
His wife Sky joins us exclusively in just minutes with more about Hodi's suicide threats, her fictitious stalker, and the fight with Travis that may have led to his murder. Let's get started. Good evening, everyone. I'm joined by my co-host, SiriusXM radio host, and attorney Jenny Hutt. And coming up, Travis Alexander's friend, Sky Hughes. She is the one who kicked Hodi out of the house. Sky's husband, you just saw, Chris, was here last night. And the feedback from y'all was intense. You wanted to hear more? We're going to bring you more. But first off, here a look back at where this trial began and where it has gone. Watch this.
It was her going into his cell phone, snooping. She did it surreptitiously. She did it without his knowledge because she wanted to know. She just couldn't help herself. And so she looks in there and finds things that she doesn't like. And at that point, they break up. They continue to talk. They continue to send text messages, emails, instant messaging, and oh yes, there's the phone sex that she records of them when they are engaged in that particular conduct. And it's the phone sex that she keeps.
Travis tied Hodi up, tied her to the bed with this rope. He used a knife to cut the rope when it was at the appropriate length. They engaged in sexual activity. And then, part of what they were doing that afternoon, too, was that he wanted to take pictures of Hodi. The kind of pictures that Travis wants to take of Hodi are the kind that would make most people cringe with embarrassment. And we show you these photos not for any type of shock value, but you're going to see them in trial.
Yes, Jenny, those pictures do make people cringe with embarrassment, and here we are looking at them in a court of law. Amazing.
Yeah. It is amazing. Everything she does is amazing in the worst way, Drew. She's everything pretty much that no one ever wants to be. It's just, Well,
certainly Chris's description last night was chilling, and I'm very interested to speak with Sky, who's coming up a little bit later in this hour. Yeah. So stay with us. We will find out more. And what I've seen about what Sky has to say, I was stunned. So Joining us now is attorney Mark Eiglar. He is from speaktomark.com. Lisa Bloom is legal advisor for avo.com, and our human lie detector, Janine Driver, author of You Can't Lie to Me. Check out this picture, guys. It is Hodi's next expert witness. First, Richard Geffner, another psychology guy. Team Hodi wants him to testify about brain injury and incapacitation. The state wants to call Jill Hayes. She's a neuropsychologist. Mark, this begs the question of, are we seeing sore rebuttal here? What does this mean? Why are they going through this? And I'm going to predict, Mark, your fog's going to come up in this one.
Absolutely. What this means is my week is going to suck. I thought this trial was finally coming to an end. Finally, I can get back to just being at home with my family instead of analyzing every night. But apparently, both sides just doesn't know when to quit. Oh, yeah, well, I'll show you. And so you've got the prosecutor who presented rebuttal, the defense saying, look, I'm being paid by the hour, and you know what, I don't want to land on death row, so I'll call more in rebuttal. And the prosecutor says, well, you know, you're going to say that, I'll say this. And unfortunately, it looks like it just keeps going on.
It's Pee-wee's Playhouse. I know you are, but what am I? Right. Okay, yeah, and we have some really interesting information tonight I need to report to the audience. This is something you've heard about before, but we have something new. 4 months before Hodi killed Travis, Travis actually called the police about his tires having been slashed outside his home. This was an overnight vandalism. The car was owned by an on-again, off-again girlfriend. No specific information about a suspect was given. But A, a police report, B, guess who? Lisa, why wasn't this brought up in court?
Well, perhaps the prosecution did try to get it in and the judge said no. This is the type of thing that would normally be the subject of a motion in limine, which means it would be decided before the trial. There's no clear link to Hodi Arias. We all clearly think that she's the one that slashed those tires, but without that clear link, the judge is going to say it's too prejudicial, it doesn't come into evidence.
Mark, no clear link? Come on.
No, she's right. The court of public opinion is one thing, but when this case goes up on appeal, we don't want to try this case again. And who would testify to the slashing? Well, conveniently, Travis, unfortunately, is not here. So you'd have a police officer testify that Travis told him that his tires were slashed. That's hearsay, and that, unfortunately, for the court of public opinion, but fortunately in the court of law, it doesn't come in, because you can't cross-examine the declarant, that being Travis.
Yeah, but guys,
Yeah, Jen.
how scary must that have been for Travis?
Of course.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And you know,
Janine,
this
I'm gonna-
happens all the time. I have trials where there's evidence that I think is so important that the jury hear it and the judge just says, no, it's not clear enough, it's not linked up. If Hodi had been arrested or better yet convicted for slashing those tires, then of course that would come in. But without that, it's just too speculative.
And the good news is this case does not hinge upon getting that piece of evidence in. It does
Right,
not.
right.
She should
There's
be
tons
convicted.
else.
And you don't want to then risk it on appeal. Everything is about making sure she has a clean trial and that she goes away and we don't have to hear her again.
And thus, Mark, you will never go home to see your family. But Gene, you have something to say here. Go ahead.
Well, you know, whether it's this paper goes in or we have another witness and then another witness and now we're getting this testimony down into this really finite area, the questions are going to be really limited. I was there the last day Hodi testified in court, and I got to tell you, at that time, which was a month ago, the jury is somewhat getting a little bored on this. You know, I see some of the jury are just literally checked out and they're just staring off into space, you know, and at what point, this is longer than the O.J. Simpson trial. At what point do we say enough is enough? So I think that they already have their minds made up at this point. It's getting a little ridiculous.
Hey, Janine, something I've never asked you about just occurred to me. Does the judge give any clues or give up anything about what she's feeling with her body language? Because she's pretty consistent. I've never asked you that. That's interesting.
Well, you
Go
know,
ahead.
I got to tell you, I don't think the judge has a lot of control over the court. They take tons of breaks. It's unbelievable how much time is actually spent in court. When I was there, I was shocked at the little amount of court time that actually took place. There are way too
answer
many.
his question. It was a good question. Answer it. It was a very good question. Can you tell, using your human lie detector thing, could you tell whether she's favoring one side or the other?
Or whatever, any sort
I
of
think this is the problem. I think she wants to be liked by both sides, and I think that's why she doesn't have good control of the courtroom. Why does Hodi Arias allowed to take a pill in court? My mother's a nurse. Why would you not go outside of the courtroom and take your pill with a nurse? Why does she allow that to happen? Why does she allow Jose Baez? I mean, why does she allow Juan Martinez even to hit her?
Do you think it has to do that she has to hear? You know, our courts are so underfunded. Let me stick up for this judge for a minute. She's got a lot to do besides the Hodi Arias case. And when there's breaks, judges typically are hearing other cases and deciding other matters. So it may seem like only a little bit of time to us, but judges tend to work very hard, especially on small budgets.
No. But what I mean, Lisa, what I meant by that is I'm in there. The court starts at 10:30. That's fine. The judge has work to do before then. But we're taking breaks nonstop. The actual testimony is so limited. It's unbelievable. Then we're out of there. There's an hour and a half lunch. We're out of there at like 4:30.
Well,
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Right, but the judge
Jodi
is
has
usually
to take
working
breaks.
back in chambers.
okay, but
Jodi needs breaks. But let me
Jodi
ring. I'm
needs
going to
breaks.
ring Janine like a host here, guys. I'm going to ring Janine like a towel here for a second. You didn't answer the question, though. I want to see if you can do it. Has she given any tells with her body language, with her facial expression,
There
or
it is.
anything you can
I
sense
think
that's
she
going on with that
favors.
judge?
I
Is
think
she
she
worrying
favors
about what's going
Jodi.
on at home? Is she worrying about, like Mark, she wants to get home to her kids? Is there something like that you can read?
Okay, I think she favors Hodi Arias more than she favors the prosecution.
Really? You think she's
But it's a
taking
jury
by
trial,
Jodi?
so what difference does it make ultimately?
I think that she does. I think that she lets a lot get in there. I think, you look at Nurmi. He's slouched in his chair. I mean, are you serious? If I allowed my students to sit this way when I teach law enforcement, I would have no control over my classrooms. You know, there's a sense of respect that you get, and I think you need to be a little bit of a bulldog. I think that she comes across, in my perspective as a body language expert, favoring Hodi Arias.
Okay,
Wow.
a little bit of a poker face, I think. We might have to play poker against her. Okay, guys, thank you very much. Next up, Jodi was a snoop and an eavesdropper. What kind of person is likely to do that? Not only do that, but wake up in the middle of the night and think to herself, somebody's talking about me. I've got to find out who. The Behavior Bureau is going to look at just that. And later, Sky Hughes is here. She is telling tales, chilling tales about Jodi, her suicide threats, her fake stalkers, and more.
We're talking for, a couple hours, and all of a sudden my wife, she's got a sixth sense about things, and she says, oh my gosh, she's out there. She's whispering this, and we're all like looking at her like, who, Jodi? And she says, yeah, she's out there, she's listening. And so we're all kind of freaked out, and we changed the subject for about 30 seconds, and then there's a knock at the door, and it's Jodi. Maybe another 45 minutes to an hour goes by, and my wife gets this feeling again, and she goes, she's out there again. She's listening to our conversation. She's whispering this, of course. And so Travis jumps off the bed, jerks the door open, and there's Hodi Ariastein with the most frightening, evil, I've never seen anything like it before or since, and I've seen a lot of things in my 40 years, nothing like what we saw that night.
It's time for the Behavior Bureau, back with my co-host, Jenny Hutt. Jodi was caught, Chris was describing there, trying to eavesdrop in the middle of the night when she was supposed to have been asleep, eavesdropping on a personal conversation that Travis was having with his friends, his best friend and his wife, not once, but twice. Still with us, Janine Driver. Joining us, Cheryl Arrett, forensic and clinical psychologist. Deneen Manette, author of Ultimate Betrayal. Samantha Shocker, social commentator and host of Pop Trigger, and via phone, Abe Abdelhadi, who dated Jodi and who's been helping us out here throughout the trial. Deneen, I'm going to start with you. Eavesdropping and snooping, and I want people to understand, sort of sensing that somebody was talking about her, I would say, and getting out of bed and pursuing. What does that say about Jodi?
I think it's really, really interesting that the wife, Chris's wife, is the one that figured out that she was out there. Women know women, and women can pick up evil in another woman, just like men know men. Men can tell when another man is trying to push up on his girl or whatever. Women know women, and I think that is so telling that she had that inclination to think, that she was out there listening. Because Jodi, to me, is like a snake. And I want to apologize in advance to the reptile world, because I'm sure they're getting offended that I'm comparing her to them. But the way she just slithers around and coils up and pretends to be innocent and your friend, but then cross her and she bites you, like diabolical. But I just find that to be so incredibly telling that Chris's wife's intuition just kind of, she just nailed it. She knew right away that she was out there just being sneaky and devious.
Cheryl, what do you think Chris was talking about, what he looked at in those eyes? Is that he just looked at her chaos or something, or was she hostile and aggressive? What do you think he saw?
I think that he saw a little bit of the really primitive kind of rage, panic that happens to somebody who's borderline, who feels out of control, rejected, and separated. The idea that these people were somewhere else excluding her, talking about her, was something absolutely unbearable. And if we think about a borderline identity, her identity has sort of been compared to Jell-O, which will take on any shape of something that contains it. But if you remove that structure and you try to pick it up, it falls apart in your hands.
Oh, that's
she is drawn to the structure, whether it's Mormonism or anything else. But she doesn't have any sense of who she is. So I think it's a rage, desperation, panic.
That is a great analogy. I love the Jell-O analogy. And speaking of the borderline issue, let's talk about Janine DeMarte. She was the psychologist hired by the prosecution to examine Jodi, do psych testing on her, formally diagnosed her with a borderline personality disorder. Take a look at what she said.
I diagnosed her on Axis 2 as borderline personality disorder. Unstable interpersonal relationships, unstable emotions, and an unstable sense of identity, meaning who am I as a person? There's this constant fluctuation. There's a lot of manipulation that's involved with people who have borderline personality disorder, and a large sense of immaturity.
Abe, does that sound familiar to you?
It sure does, and it was after Jodi that I came up with a method called the same gender evaluation, or the SGE. That's my own little clinical thing that I do, and what I'll do is when I'm dating somebody for a period of time, I bring her around my girlfriends, and I do exactly what Sky did for Travis, or tried to.
Which is, explain that. I don't quite get it.
Well, because the same gender evaluation, you get a girl to evaluate the girl. Sometimes you're blinded by, lust or whatever, but your girlfriends, if they're your friends without an agenda, will tell you exactly what you should be looking out for. And, my dear good girlfriends that I've known 15, 20 years, they've never let me down. And what Sky was attempting to do for Travis, and unfortunately he didn't get it until it was way too late, was to let him know, look, this chick is out of her mind. Get out now. It's like that horror movie where you see the person in the house and you're screaming at the screen, get out of the house. He's outside, and he wasn't doing it.
All right, let me go around the horn a little bit and get an SGE first from Janine.
Well, this is the deal. In law enforcement, if we knock on your door in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock, we're looking for fear. But we didn't hear fear from Chris Hughes. What did we hear? A frightening, evil look. So that says to me it was probably a combination of fear and anger. When we see that fear and anger combination, it's like a bull ready to launch, like Mark was challenging me earlier to give you guys an answer, right? So that feistiness, we're looking for surprise, a normal person who gets busted listening, and we may have all listened at some point in our life to a conversation where we thought someone was talking to us. Doesn't make us crazy, but if you got busted, you'd be like, oh, surprise first. Surprise is the quickest of all emotions, Dr. Drew. Never lasts more than 3 seconds. So if you throw a surprise party for your son who plays rugby, and he comes in and he goes, he knows that someone let the cat out of the bag. He was having a surprise party. So we don't, from my take from Chris Hughes' analysis, is that she wasn't indicating surprise. Now, surprise is always a catalyst to another emotion. So it could go surprise to sadness, surprise to fear. But to go right to fear, to anger, that's that frightening, evil look that we get.
Interesting. I'm going to go to Samantha before Jenny real quick. Samantha.
Okay.
Again, back to the same gender evaluation, the SGE. Go ahead, you want to ring in, go.
I agree 100%. I don't necessarily think that the eerie part of Chris Hughes' story was the fact that she was eavesdropping. I mean, many people have been guilty of eavesdropping. I've been guilty of eavesdropping in the past. It's been a long time, but let's be honest. So I think what was eerie about it was when Chris Hughes described Hodi Arias as being evil, and to the point where he said he even feared for his children's safety. I'm curious to know if he witnessed the same evil eyes that we recently witnessed in court when she was looking at the crime scene photos. Those were some crazy eyes, Dr. Drew.
Yes, I agree. Who's trying to talk? Was that Jenny?
That's me, yeah. Drew, Dr. Drew, I just have to say that I just can't believe her bravado. If it were the middle of the night and I started to feel like, oh, maybe somebody's talking about me upstairs, I would be shaking in my bed, afraid to move. I'd be all mixed up and so anxious. The fact that she got up, got out, and went to the door and waited and then reacted, it's nuts. The whole thing. She's Jenny, really out of control.
Yeah, Jenny, you and I have shared, we have anxiety disorder, and I identify with what you're saying very strongly. And I can only share with the public to help people. We're going to try to sort of tackle more what this means to have a borderline disorder, a real borderline disorder. We used to have a lot of borderlines on the chemical dependency treatment where I worked, and my nurse would always put her antenna up whenever I came on the unit because she said that borderlines could tell even if I was driving into the parking lot, they knew somehow that I was coming out of the hospital ground. That's the kind of strange intuition I've seen and heard from borderlines all the time. And to me, this is that same phenomenon that she wakes up in the night and goes, somebody's talking about me.
And then
I'm gonna go find out who. How dare they? And then she's met with Chris has met with the real emotion behind what was motivating all that. Next up, thank you, ladies. Hodi says a lot without speaking. Take her hair, for example. What do her changes in hairstyle and color say? And later, the woman who told Travis again and again that Hodi was no good for him and up to no good, why he didn't listen after this.
Identity disturbance. It's about instability. There's unstable interpersonal relationships, unstable emotions, and an unstable sense of identity, meaning who am I as a person? This is also a symptom that I found in Miss Arias. Her ex-boyfriend, Daryl, was talking about her pattern of behaviors. He had indicated that there was a point in which she had changed the color of her hair, bought a certain car, and acted a certain way to be consistent with his ex-wife.
Back with my co-host Jenny Hutt and the Behavior Bureau. I really thought that psychologist was good, DeMarte, just sort of no nonsense. Yeah. And Jenny, you and I have been sort of self-disclosing about our anxiety disorder here, so thank you for bringing that up. But another thing that I was mentioning in the last segment about when I would treat borderlines on a chemical dependency unit, my nurse also used to say I gave them superpowers. that when I would come onto the grounds, Cheryl, you might find this kind of interesting. When I would come near the hospitals, they would begin acting out. It's like, I don't know what it is. I don't know what that is, but I just want to share with the audience that there's this kind of phenomenon that goes along with the borderline disorder that's hard to describe.
Dr. Drew,
go ahead, Jenny.
I feel like they do have this magic power, and to me, you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier, that sort of the sultry sexual power that they inflict on people to get them to do what they want. I never had any of that. Like, that's one part of the borderline personality that I'd like.
Well, I've got the Behavior Bureau standing by for you. I know that you're envious of Jodi in certain ways, but we'll deal with that after the show. Jodi, speaking of Jodi, her hair color, its change, its style, they've been an important part of the trial. Take a look at this hair timeline. And again, we have to warn people that there may be some graphic material in here that's not suitable for everyone in the audience. Take a look.
This was taken at the time of the booking on July 15th?
Yes, sir. He said the person that came in and rented the vehicle was number 5, except that she had blonde hair when she came in and got the car.
Exhibit 638. It's taken at what date?
June 3rd, 2008 at 2:28.
What is the date on that? It's down there.
June 3rd, 2008 at 15:22 hours.
Which came later, the Walmart receipt or the photograph?
The Walmart receipt.
There were other pictures taken, what appear to be taken on that day on June 4th, right?
Yes.
And those are those pictures that we saw of Mr. Alexander and some of Ms. Arias. The nude photos.
Yes.
Prosecution's position is that she dyed her hair as a disguise, but there is this identity issue. Cheryl, you're the one that keeps sort of nailing that down. I love your Jell-O mold analogy. What do you make of the hair and my superpowers for borderlines?
Well, first of all, Dr. Drew, I have to say that when you've been working on these units, it sounds like those borderlines want you to be their Jell-O mold. They want to mold themselves around the structure that they feel from you.
That's right.
So I have to say that first and foremost. You know, and it's reassuring to them when you show up. So that's when the superpowers start activating, since you asked. And second, I think that we do see that identity diffusion, but we also, somebody can have that and still want to disguise themselves and still want attention. And I wanted to say something to Jenny Hutt. Jenny, do you remember last night's show when we were talking about Jodi tweeting and you were saying, what do you have to do to get this many Twitter followers? My Twitter exploded with all these people tweeting saying, scroll down, they're fake followers, they have 0 tweets and 0 this and that. Somebody seems to have purchased those Twitter followers.
Wow.
Lots of them. And I thought this was an important thing to know.
I think that actually is kind of you to tell me to make me feel better.
Hold on a second. I've got Samantha here to tell us about that.
Well, there's the attention thing, too.
Hang on. Samantha, I'm so glad you're here. This is exactly your domain. What is that all about?
With the social media or the change of hair color? Because
we've suddenly moved into social media a little bit. So go ahead.
Okay.
Either.
So first of all, with social media, with Jodi Arias, I think at the end of the day, this is another form, another way for her to validate herself. Because whether or not that some of these followers are fake, which I pray to God that they are, because who in their right mind would follow Jodi Arias? But there are people out there that are supporting her, that are intrigued by her, that are captivated by her. And if she can go on her Twitter account and feel validated at the end of the day, it's absolutely, in my opinion, she's one of the most narcissistic people I've ever witnessed.
And Deneen, what is it about people who are so preoccupied with, I know about women preoccupied with men that are murderers, I can kind of get my head around that, but what about the Jodi Arias fans?
It's like watching an airplane crash or a car crash or something. People just like to be drawn into something that's kind of sinister or evokes an emotion that's just kind of even gory to a certain degree. And as far as her hair color, I'm wondering whether or not that is part of her personality. If she's like, has her hair dark when she's feeling sinister, and then when she's feeling playful, she lightens it up, and kind of like, you know, the angel and devil on her shoulder. Like maybe this one is Jodi and this one is Judas. I don't know.
Or it's whatever way the wind blows. Like as Cheryl said, the Jell-O, the mold's not there to hold her, and so she just kind of drifts into another sort of sense of herself. Jeanine, you were studying that tape very carefully. What'd you get out of it?
You know, it's interesting. First of all, I wasn't saying much because I change my hair color all the time. I blame it on the fact that I'm a I'm a Gemini, so I have the two personalities. I know. And I got to say, Jenny Hutt, I've never seen you look prettier. You look like a mermaid tonight. You look gorgeous. And I'm sitting here looking at you, Jenny, and I think, I want to become a redhead and do the whole mermaid thing. Like, Jenny, you look smoking hot tonight. I'm a Gemini. I like change. I've had short red hair. I look like the heat miser. I have the long blonde. I've been a brunette. I'm a natural brunette. But I like change. And I have to say, I'm a publicist nightmare big time because I like that change. So for me, I like the change.
But so, Jeannie, you say you're giving Jodi a pass. Samantha, finish me up here. Is hair color sometimes a cigar is just a cigar?
I mean, if that were the case, Dr. Drew, you could diagnose Nicki Minaj with identity disorder. It's ridiculous. So let me tell you this. At the end of the day, yes, women change their hair color. I've been brunette. I've been blonde. Yes, I'm not a natural blonde. Surprise, surprise. But with Jodi Arias, everything is calculated. From her renting a car that's not red, from her going to Arizona with her hair dyed so she can remain undetected, so she can go into Travis Alexander's home and brutally murder him.
There you go. There you go. Samantha, thank you for that button. Well said. Next up, thank you, ladies, by the way. Next up, no one was closer to Travis Alexander than Sky Hughes and her husband, Chris. Chris had a ton to say last night, but wait till you hear Sky. She is up next.
Whose dress was it that you were borrowing?
His friend's wife, Sky Hughes.
Good morning, Miss Hughes. Can you tell us your full name, please?
Sky Lee Hughes.
And Miss Hughes, are you married to Chris Hughes?
Yes, I am.
How long have you been married?
10 years.
10 years. Do you know Travis? Did you know Travis Alexander?
Yes, I did.
How did you know Travis?
We were good friends.
We're joined by my co-host Jenny Hutt, Mark Eiglarsh, and Lisa Bloom still with us. Joining us now is Sky Hughes herself. Sky and her husband Chris were best friend with Travis Alexander. Both took the stand in Jodi's trial. Sky, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you to you. Thank you to Chris. We all feel very moved, first of all, appreciative, and secondly, moved by the story that you guys have been telling us. So let me start with this. After Travis was murdered, you and your husband found some email exchanges between Jodi and Travis, and it revealed something very interesting. Tell us about that.
Well, the emails were the ones that we read through all of them from their whole relationship, and we read through emails between him and all of his friends, and the one that stuck out most to us was the fight that occurred on May 26th, because it's the first time that Travis really saw Jodi for who she was and saw what we saw, throughout their relationship.
And let me take you back to that night that Chris was so vividly describing to us, where you guys were having a private, quiet conversation with Travis, and then you had this sense that Jodi was outside the door.
Yeah.
What would tell us about that feeling? And then I'm going to try to paraphrase what Abe Abdel-Hadi said. Give us your same gender evaluation of what you saw when Travis finally threw the door open.
Well, the only reason I knew she was out there is I just got this really cold, frightened feeling that just almost like you're being watched, or just sort of like a fear. And when Travis threw the door open, I don't know if I could adequately describe the look that I saw, but it was almost like rage and anger, and it was very disturbing and very, very frightening. I've never seen that in anyone ever.
Is that when you decided there was something off about her, or you really already knew there was something going on?
Oh no, we already knew. She had been obsessed with Travis, very early in the relationship. I think Chris talked about how, she had some sort of vision or something that she was going to marry him. And it was after that point, I think it was in December, she would not let that go, and she wouldn't let him go. And, all sorts of very disturbing behavior. She had written Travis, or sent Travis, an anonymous email that she got, and from a stalker, from a man that had been watching her. And this email said, you're so beautiful, you're so amazing, and Travis doesn't deserve you, and how just how incredible Jodi was and how awful Travis was, and that he was watching Jodi's every move, and that Travis was too far away to protect her. And this was at a time when Jodi was trying to get Travis to ask her to move to Arizona, and Travis, you know, he didn't know her that well.
Did that guy
and he wasn't ready to make
exist?
that step in the relationship.
Did this guy exist,
No.
the stalker?
You know,
She made that up?
No, it was. She completely made it up. And Travis, he said, I was doing dishes, and he said, hey, there's something I want to read to you. And he brings it, and he starts reading it, and I started laughing. And he got really upset. He said, Sky, he says, this is very serious. I'm really worried about this. And I said, Travis, Jodi wrote that. You know, Jodi wrote that email.
Did he
He's like,
believe
why would you even say that?
Did he didn't believe you?
No, he said Jodi would never do anything like that. You know, she's so nice. Why would she do this? And I said, because she's been wanting you to ask her to move to Arizona. You know, this is so, this was Jodi. This was so immature, so manipulative, you know.
I'm going to give Mark a chance to ask you a question in just a second, though. But tell me again, what were the nicknames you had for Jodi?
Peyton from Hand That Rocks the Cradle and Rabbit Boiler, just because of the things that we saw, you know.
Sky.
Mark, go ahead. What do you got?
Yeah.
Sky, it's my understanding that it got so bad for you that you turned to Travis and you said, I mean, no uncertain terms, you must break up with her. And apparently his response was, I can't because she's going to kill herself.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you feel in your heart like you did everything you could to get him away from her?
You know, more than once we'd have these conversations, and I was really, really hard on Travis. And I would tell him, you know, there's just something not right. She's obsessed with you. You know, these behaviors are very frightening. And I said, just stop talking to her. Just stop calling her. And he said, you don't understand. She said she's going to kill herself. And I said, she's not going to kill herself. And he said, no. He says, you can't guarantee that, and I can't live with myself if she does.
And that's more of that borderline
and
stuff.
I wish there was something more I could have
Borderline
done.
typically will threaten suicide. Lisa, go ahead. You got something for Sky?
Yeah, it's so manipulative. So, Sky, first of all, I'm so sorry for the loss of your friend, Travis. And you and your husband were best friends with him. You knew him so well. We know now that Hodi Arias killed him. The only question in this trial is why. You were there. You knew them. Why do you think she did it?
You know, for years, I thought it was the Cancun trip, you know, and that, I think, motivated part of it. I think it was when she really saw that he was moving on. He was making steps in his life to cut things off with her, to really move on with his life in a lot of ways. But as as things have unfolded and I've thought about that fight that they got in, you know, it was the first time that he really saw what we saw, you know, you know, he said that.
And Sky, I want you to think about this. I think I have to go to break, but I understand that you believe there might have been something he was going to reveal about Jodi. I want you to think about that and tell us after the break. We'll be right back. Back with my co-host Jenny Hutt, Mark Eiglarsh, Lisa Bloomer with us, and Sky Hughes. Sky, I just want to acknowledge, first again, I want to thank you, but I want to acknowledge how tough this has got to be when we're asking you really difficult questions like, do you wish you'd done more? Have you done everything? Of course you couldn't have predicted how far this was going to go. Even those of us with knowledge about these kinds of disorders don't take it where it went. It's an extraordinary, extraordinary thing you guys have had to deal with.
Thank you. Thanks.
So I want you to think about what I asked you before the break. What about this, whatever was they were fighting about? It seems like I understand that there might have been something Travis had on Jodi. What do you think that was, and is that what led to the murder?
You know, I wish I had an answer. We've racked our brains, you know, we went through all the emails again, we went through the fight, and we just can't figure it out. Jodi had done something very, very bad, very unforgivable, and it had to have been worse than slashing tires, stealing journals, stealing rings, stalking him. Like, it was worse than that, because this is the first time that I saw this kind of response from him. And so I don't know what it was. It had to have been really bad. I do think that this led to her deciding that she was going to kill him, because it was after this, you know, this happened on the 26th, and on the 28th, the gun is stolen, and around that time, she asks Daryl for gas cans, and then she tells Ryan that she's going to be there the following week, and all of that seems to have happened right after this fight. This fight where he says, I'm going to tell the world about what you've done, and we don't know what she had done. And now, knowing her as we do, God only knows what she had done. Now, Sky, Alice LaViolette testified that you wrote Jodi and said that you wouldn't allow Travis to date your sister. What was all that about? it was nothing that they are talking about. It had nothing to do with anything they're talking about. It was the reason I wouldn't want Travis and my sister is because Travis had a hard time committing, and he was in love with Deanna Reed.
It wasn't domestic violence. It wasn't domestic violence. It wasn't the way the defense was using it. Yeah.
No, no, not even close, nothing remotely close, like nothing like that. Travis was an amazing man. He was so good to his girlfriend. You know, he was the reason, you know, Wilmot went through this list of girls that were supposedly vulnerable that Travis had mistreated. And I know these girls, and they are beautiful, confident, successful women, and they love Travis. All of them love Travis. And they would have nothing bad to say about him, and that's why they didn't put them on the stand, is because they've had 5 years to find one woman that Travis mistreated. They've got nothing.
That says everything. Okay, we'll have more with Sky in a second. My panel, I want you guys to think of questions for Sky. I'm going to come back and let you guys have at it. Be right with you. Back with our special guests, Sky Hughes. Jenny Hutt is my co-host this week, and Jenny, you have a first question.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of questions, but I'm so sorry that this happened. Let me start with that, Sky, and the havoc that this woman wreaked on all of you is it's just tragic on every level. But I heard something that Travis knew that Jodi was hacking into his email, and so he was writing things specifically for her to find them. Is that true?
Yes, when we went through his emails, well, first of all, she told me personally that she had gotten into his email and forwarded all of the emails from girls to herself. And then later, as we were going through his emails after she had killed him, there were emails that Travis wrote to himself, you know, to Travis from Travis, and the subject was, Jodi, you're caught. And then in the body of the email, it said, stay out of my email. We'll talk about this later. And, you know, there were no cuss words. There was no yelling. You know, there was no, like, anger in that. It was just, we'll talk later, you know, and that's
I know you're here.
What we saw from Travis.
Lisa, what do you got for Sky?
Okay, so Sky, I love your description of you had the sixth sense and that she had this cold, scary look and that Travis didn't see what you saw. So I want to know what suggestions you have to guys out there. You know, as a woman, we sense when there's problems with other women. What can we take from this to warn guys out there when there's a stalker or a problem woman in their life?
You know, listen to your friends, listen to your family, listen to those who love you, because they see things that sometimes when we're in love or when we care about somebody we don't want to see. And, you know, my thing to Travis was, Travis, I care about you. Why would I want to do something to hurt you or to upset you, you know? And just listen to people who love you.
Mark Eiglarsh.
That's good.
Sky, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your time and your thoughts with us. Last night, your husband explained that middle of the night meeting where you guys were talking for a while and then Jodi must have been listening in. I want to know specifically what was said, but more importantly, what did Travis say? And I'm going to then assume that Jodi heard probably some serious truths out of Travis's mouth that night.
Okay, yeah, we had seen, just throughout the month, we had seen several different instances where Jodi was very manipulative of different people, including Travis. And that particular trip to our house, I can give you a few things that we saw. You know, she was upstairs, standing outside the door, listening to his conversation with Deanna. And for a long period of time, Travis went to use the restroom, and she stood outside the door while he was in there, and he had no idea that she was in there. You know, anytime that Travis was out of her sight, she would say, have you seen Travis? Do you know where Travis is?
Wow.
You know, she would not let him out of her sight. And she just was so clean. You know, she got upset because he wouldn't look into her eyes, and she went and pouted in her room. And
wow.
I mean, just really strange, really obsessed.
Well, Sky, thank you for answering our questions. Thank you for sort of fleshing out this story for us. Again, as this trial has gone on more and more, I think the picture has become increasingly clear, rather than, Mark, you'll love this, foggy. The fog has lifted, I think, on a lot of these issues on who this person is. And by the same token, at least in the media, we're able to make a clearer picture of who Travis was. And it's nothing like what is going on in that courtroom.
No.
So, Sky, thank you so much. Thank you to the panel. Last call's next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's time for the last call. Jenny, you get the last call with your question. Go ahead.
Okay, so how do you handle this sort of if only I had mentality that these people now have to grapple with? How do they get through that?
How do they get
heal?
through their excruciating experience of sitting in court? I say, they make make sense of this all, make a narrative, share it with other people, what they're doing, support one another, and then ultimately give back, give support, create a fund in Travis. For instance, the TravisAlexanderFund.com that Chris mentioned yesterday. Check that out. Thank you to Jenny Hutt. Thank you all for watching. Thank you to my guests. I'll see you next time.